There's our transition. Here's our seat riser. I had to remake the seat riser, so I'll show you all how I did it. You can see how that fits in. And I'll show you how I joined these transition in. You can see it goes from that 6-inch radius and then blends around into the 8-inch radius for the trans tunnel. So I had to redo the flange on this part, and I accidentally made a mistake. I'm so used to flanging parts down and not flanging up that I flanged it the wrong way. So I'm just going to make a new part, and I'll show you all how we made them seat risers. And with any luck, we'll get the seat riser blended in today. So we've got the new part laid out right here. The black line references the up flange that we need in the back. The green lines are just reference lines to keep me straight in the English wheel. And then this is a reference for the other curve, beginning and end. And there are reference lines on the bottom of the panel for the correction. We're going to be using a 6-inch radius lower anvil and a rubber band on the upper wheel. And I'll get set up and we can video it. So we're not going to be using a lot of pressure. And the one thing we want to make sure is our track marks are real close side by side. And all we're doing is just back and forth, like walking a barrel. Just give it a little bit of a tilt, come down that next line.
That's right.
The rubber band will absorb the front to back action and only give you a 2-dimensional change in form. And that's all that we want. We're not running a lot of pressure at all. You can already see we're getting a change. So I'm going to work it the rest of the way, get the rest of that 6-inch radius put in, and we'll go from there. Once I have it close, I come over here and my fixture cart, I have made up a little Winfield mule. I believe that's what they were called. They were a set of pipes that were welded together for bending radiuses and stuff on. And what I do is just give it that last little bit of tweak and correct the shape and do anything I need to do. Now I'll move and do the same thing to the bottom side and blend the transition, and we'll be ready to start laying out the next part. Here we are. We got our seat riser. Flange is in the correct direction this time, and it's in the correct form and shape. So next thing we need to do is put this joggle in it. So if you picture it as a plane looking straight on, this point and this point need to stay the same distance apart. They just need to change in elevation. So in order to do that, this center piece of metal here has to stretch. So I'm going to do that stretch. I'm going to do it by hand today without the machine. What we're also going to have to do is this flange is locking it. So if we just stretch this point here is going to go down, which is going to change everything in here. But we want this to stay the same. So what we got to do is as we stretch this, we're going to have to come back somewhere in here and shrink. That way this comes up. And this is allowed to make that joggle, but keep everything in shape and form. This is the setup. This is the setup in the bead roller. I'm going to come in from the back side, and my hand is going to be the third point, putting pressure up to start that step or that joggle. I'm going to do that off camera, and then we'll go from there. I've already started a little bit to stretch this edge. You can see how this is pointed down a little. I need to shrink back here to get this to pick up. That way I don't change this form back here. But the hammer that I'm using is this cross peen that we made from an old pick hammer. It's a piece of 3/8 4140 round stock. The reason I'm using it is because when I strike, the material is going to move this way and this way, a linear stretch. If I were to use a round high crown hammer, what I would have is stretch this way, all the way around radially out of it. And I call that radial stretch. I'm not sure if there's a real term for it. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to work on the back side of the panel. That way all my hammer marks on the back side where it really won't be seen. And it'll help keep from having too much to clean up on the seen face. And what I'm going to do is most of my stretch is happening towards the outside. So that's where I'm going to have most of my strikes. And I'm going to slowly feather a little bit back to blend it into this, back where I'm going to shrink in order to get this back up. So it's going to be fairly strong strikes because I want to stretch it. But like I said, I'm doing more on the outside edge than I am on the inside. Now once I've done that, I'm going to come in with my flat square-faced hammer and I'm going to dress it up and get its form back to right, and then I'll start comparing it. As you can see, this is our part that we're as you can see, we got quite a ways to go, but this needs to relax up to get it wanting to move in the right direction. So we're going to continue on, and once I get it close, bit of more work, we have it very, very close. Very close. And this is, we can take our part, our transition. We can set our transition in and see that it is still really close. And the little bit of shrink that we had to do in here, we also had to stretch just a little bit to straighten that out. That way it wasn't over curled trying to come into the floorboard. But that allowed this piece to rise up, but the rest of it to stay in form. So now we can come in, and if we have any spots like this where it needs to be blended and transitioned, it might be hard for you to see. We can come in with like the reverse curve hammer, for instance, and come in at this angle and just and blend it in and move it around. If there's a little spot right in here, we can do the same thing and we can get it blended in and smoothed out, and it should look really good when we're done. So now that we have this done, we're going to go back to the car, set everything into the car, and figure out where exactly this transition needs to start, and we can start joining the transition into the seat riser. So here we are. We did a test fit in the car. Everything looked pretty good. We took some dicum, I dicumed it and put a scribe line, so now we can cut it and start tacking together. I still got a few things that I got to correct and just make sure it all blends together, but I think we are ready to join it. So I'll get that done and ready to tack. So here it is. I had started to tack every inch like I normally do. Then I ended up having a little bit of a gap here, so I welded this section first, and that closed some of the gap up. Then I just started to weld here, and instead of tacking it, I just took the weld and used the shrinking and got it to come all the way to here. See, I got 100% penetration, and what I want to do now is just sand the cap of the weld off and start to metal finish it and get it blended together. There must have been something a little bit off in the transition of that just did it, but it's all joined together. It should look good in the car. I'm going to trim a little bit and, like I said, metal finish that, and we'll go from there. So here we go. I'm just using sanders and files. Even my grinder just has a flat wheel sander in it, and I'm just taking the crown of the weld off, and then I'm coming in with a file or a sander, and I'm going over it and finding the highs and the lows. Like right there is a low, and I took the dolly on this side and the hammer on the other side, and I worked it up, and now that's ready to be hit just to get that cap off of that weld and then sand it some more. And this here area I'm almost finished. Just everything worked out in that spot, and it's fairly nice looking. I have ran it through the English wheel just a little bit to blend it together to try to get rid of that little bit of error that I had, but it doesn't look bad. You can see here where I did a little bit of blocking, and I haven't hammered and dollied it out yet. But it's all because I had a little bit of error when I went to weld it, and now I got to fight planishing it to get it out. But that's the transition, the floor pan into the seat riser, and a transition into from a 6-inch radius to an 8-inch radius in the transmission tunnel. And like I said, this edge needs to be trimmed, And now that we don't have this stacked on top of that, we can put it back in the car and see what finishing details it takes to make this match the trans tunnel and the floorboard, and then we can blend it in. And that'll be a step for next week. But there it is.